how to scale creators without actually fatiguing. We're going to cover three main things why this is happening, some fundamentals that you need to understand in terms of like why this is happening, and why the two key metrics that you need to start playing around and really focusing on and actually tracking in order to prevent that. We're going to talk creative, what's really happening there, and how you can avoid it, and basically how you get better creative. Number three, some quick media buying tactics that you can do today to improve that and obviously make ads to no fatigue. So yeah, the first thing to understand is like in every scenario, we can really see each ad as an individual unit inside Meta. So for example, you may have like one ad here, one ad here, one ad here. And potentially like for example, these three didn't really work. This one got most of the scale, right? Each ad has a very specific path that you potentially are in at the moment. So that path is that essentially you are scaling. So you just launch the ad, you just launch it here, you start scaling, spend, spend. Then you hit a bit of a kind of plateau there, and then you just start pulling back, because then you start underperforming, you start pulling back, you're pulling back even further, you're pulling back a bit further, and then eventually it dies. Now this is so obviously we have two axes here. This one, it can be, instead of spent, this can be time. What we're trying to do here is like maximize basically the amount of time that a winning ad can actually run, because we're gonna launch a lot more ads below that to essentially find a new winner, correct? So that's exactly what's happening here, and that's where exactly we are focusing here. And there's another variable here that we need to that really influence the whole thing, because like let's say that here we have a 25 hit rate, is the hit rate, or the whatever you're gonna call it. I just call it hit rate percentage. So basically, how many of the ads that we tested are actually winning ads, and I actually have a separate video for that, how you can actually calculate it, so you can see it here. But if we improve this, obviously we get more winning ads, and by getting more winning ads, we get a bigger time frame and a lot more spend that goes into those winning ads to obviously to have better performance, to obviously scale the revenue and everything. So these are two very important metrics to understand. Essentially, what we're trying to do is like we try to increase the win rate, the win rate, or like hit rate, especially how many winning ads are there. And the other thing that we're trying to do is like how we can extend that time frame in terms of like a winning ad, or essentially that doesn't have to be just for one winning ad. It can be just across a few winning ads as well. Okay, so how we can extend that time frame, or do we want to realize the revenue earlier to based on stocks or whatever that is? But there are two important things. This happens in every scenario here, this axis, and really I'm auditing like 7 figure rounds every single week, right? Usually what happens with those, and these are like the kind of death spiral, as I like to kind of call it, usually they have maybe like 100K in spend, or like a 50K in spend per month, right? And you basically what they have is like one ad that has 40K, another ad that has maybe 5K, and then a few other ads that have like below 5K essentially. But you can see most of it, but maybe this can be like 10K, whatever. But essentially what I'm trying to do is like most of the ad spend is holding into one or three ads essentially. And this is a very, very risk position to be in, because essentially what's happening here is you are guaranteed to have those ads dethroned, and obviously kind of fatigued and everything. So you need to start getting new winners in, and this is a very risky position to be in, because if you don't have those winners, again, your whole acquisition is gonna be it's really gonna be destroyed. So you may be at this position right now, you may have like a couple of winning ads, and again, you don't even know what's gonna be the next steps. And this is very important to outline here, is around creative, because it's the only thing that it really is gonna get us out of there. So essentially, there's two things happening here with the creative. You might be thinking like, why I'm getting fatigued very fast, and why all this happens. Now you need to think about like in terms of like fatigue, especially if you're like an early stage brand, maybe like you potentially like high six figures per month, but you're still a 7 figure brand. Potentially, what you try to do initially is you had very broad messaging, and this didn't work. This just didn't work because obviously there's too many players out there that have a lot more spent, and obviously they have a lot more authority to tackle those key messaging and those key, I guess, solutions. So for example, let's say that you are, I don't know, potentially a brand that solves brain fog. Okay, too many of those. Yes, potentially like I don't know, AG1 or like a huge kind of brand here can actually claim it and actually have the fund and the, I guess, the historical presence to support that. Maybe they're in for like 5, 6 years, 7 years. And then what you try to do is like you went into a more niched kind of messaging, which is exactly what you need to do. This is where you find efficiency initially. This is where when you get that level of skill. For example, it can be, brain fog, for example, for um, parents. So they can actually have the energy for both the work and at home. Or it can be, brain fog for, I guess, busy professionals. So something like that. That a bit more specific here in terms of your messaging. But in terms of like, who do you think like how to solve brain fog and how to solve brain fog for parents? Which I guess audience segments do you think is like longer or like do you think is like bigger? It's obviously the how to I guess tackle brain fog in the more broad audience. So what ends up happening after a while is as you start getting those more niche angles, is you get into you get into a bit of a plateau which essentially is down to the messaging itself. So what you need to do here, and maybe you're testing concept one, then concept two, then concept three. Now, and these are all very niche. I would throw in a concept four that is a bit more broad. Will it work? Maybe not, maybe yes. That's the whole idea. It's like you need to start testing a bit more broad or messaging so we can start expanding into those next level of stages. And if you think about it, we are going from a bit of that more problem aware and potentially even solution aware into the more unaware market, or the more maybe potentially solution aware is here. Let me just, because I just completely messed that up. So you're moving from the problem aware to the more solution aware and to more the unaware. So we need to get more broad audience. So we need to see how we can, for example, on our previous example, how we can start going into that broad, that kind of broad messaging, whatever that is. This is how you solve the creative fatigue in the longer term, is increasing your volume in terms of testing, increasing your diversity as well, so you can get more incremental reach, but also throwing in those more broad messaging angles. Now, in terms of like what you can do from a media buying tactic perspective now to help with that fatigue and obviously prolong some of those winners as we mentioned. So a few things that you can do. A is you can dip it into an ASC campaign, which is what I do as well. Most of the time I'm testing ABO and I scale them into an ASC plus. What I would do here is the danger if it is a very niche a niche kind of I guess messaging, and that's potentially what you are dealing with, is like when you promote it, you are gonna be ending up with like potentially worse performance because at scale, that means that this just wasn't a strong enough angle to hold that scale, or potentially a actual good creative to hold that scale. And essentially, what you do, if we go into the previous example here, you're shortening the cycle. So this potentially was here. This is like somewhere here now. So potentially you have a bit of a, let me just put into a more clear way. So potentially as we say we have this and we started here. So potentially you're doing something like this, which essentially means we are maximizing revenue now and we are getting from this place here. Again, this is a question, and I guess a thing to do as well, and kind of question yourself is like, do you want to realize that revenue earlier? Usually, what I like to do as well is promote it into that core campaign because I'm testing quite a lot of stuff, and obviously the goal is to scale at a high level. Now, Number two is dupe it. Dupe that ad set that you're testing, obviously those top performers, into a cost cap. This will do a few things. It will squeeze a lot more efficient cost per acquisition, a lot more efficiency out of that concept, and potentially you can start to revive that concept, entering the auction with a just different bidding, right? Compared to what you just had before. Number three, which I guess is a bit more a bit different, is and just going more on the creative side of things again, is like you can start iterating. Now, post Andromeda, as you know, this is not the most effective way, especially I guess it can depends. By iteration, I mean like here, I mean, 2 weeks that you can do without creative. So obviously it can start with as simple as like hooks, but it can be as great as, for example, different creators. And this is when you start getting the best of Andromeda, is how you can recreate some of the concepts with like different creators and completely different, basically a completely different new kind of creative. And this is how you can also iterate on that winning concept. So just to summarize, how you can actually scale without fatiguing and without your ads are fatiguing is you need to take a look at a few things here. First of all, you need to take a look at your hit rate, basically how many ads actually end up winning, how you can improve this. This can be improved by potentially more volume, better creative itself, better execution, better angles, better research of your customers, and increasing that hit rate will have a massive effect in terms of like expanding those winners and not just having just one winner. Number two, you need to understand is this I guess visual here that always one creative is gonna obviously start fatiguing after a point and then it kind of drop, is how we can have multiple other creatives here on the backend that we are testing, and we have multiple winners here to support the scale, and how we can also iterate as we go and do some of the kind of tips that we mentioned here to extend that kind of longevity of the asset. And the most important thing, I guess, that you need to understand is like how you can get more broad with your messaging and how you can start expanding the messaging in order to start getting into those new levels of scale of spend, while maintaining, while I guess, maintaining that efficiency as much as possible, because you are going to be declining the efficiency as you scale into more unaware, more cold audiences. But in order to even scale, you need broad audiences as well. So how you can now, the more practical thing to do is how you can in next week, how you can get into more of those broad audiences, essentially here with like a new concept or a new kind of creative angle. So that was the video for today. I hope you really enjoyed it. I have a lot more free resources down below, so you can check them out. That can help you out in terms of like your improving your profit, improving your creative output, your creative itself, obviously scaling your e-commerce business. Thanks all for watching this, and I hope you have a great day.